Hello, welcome back to the channel. So with all the talk about like buffs and power creep and that sort of thing, one thing that I have thought of for a bit now is, does Starl need more endgame? Because I have seen a lot of people say that, and while I do think that Starl could use more game modes and just more content in general, I don't think that it necessarily needs more endgame modes, at least like right now, for a couple of reasons. One, I think the trio of modes that we already have is a fine system. I just think that some of them could use some changes, mainly MOC. Pure Fiction, I think, is fine as it is, since it just got a rework. I say just, but it was in like, what was it, 2.6? I don't even remember what patch it was. And Apocalyptic Shadow is fine, I do enjoy it, though I could see some changes being needed for it to make it a bit more interesting, because at least for me, it does feel like a bit undercooked and kind of like a little bit boring, even though I do would still enjoy it. It's just, it feels like it needs more, you know? But MOC honestly needs like a whole rework, like what Pure Fiction got. It is just so outdated, especially since MOC is like the main mode that people think of for in-game. It's like, it was like the first one, but also because it is the one that's the closest to like base combat, so it's the easiest one to actually see if your character's builds are good enough. But like, there's just so many problems with it. Like, one, with how favored it is towards the on-banner character, which isn't necessarily a problem for that to be a thing. I think the problem is just how much it is favored towards them, where like to the point where if you can't interact with the buff because you just don't have the characters for it, it just feels really bad to play. Let's not say that like it's impossible to beat it if you can't interact with the buffs. It's just gonna feel really bad. I think that's the main problem, because I do think that some people's problems with not being able to beat it, it just has to come with them just not having very good builds. But that doesn't really change the fact that like it just doesn't feel good to play MOC. Like, it's probably like the worst mode to play in the game. Like, what I would do for MOC is, one, make it so that the buffs worked like the other two modes, where you have like 3 options instead of only 1, to, you know, give people more options, and to maybe so that more than just like one sort of character is actually good. Maybe have like, you know, one of the buffs be favored towards a new character, and then the other 2 be like for like other teams and archetypes, and then maybe also have like an option, maybe only for like floor like 11 and 12, but maybe have like options for which fight you can do on each side. Maybe have like an option of like 2 or 3 different fights, because some characters are like way better against certain bosses and like way worse against certain bosses, because the point isn't necessarily to make it easier. Since I see a lot of people like say that like you just want it to be easier when you talk about the problems with the endgame, but like, I don't want it to be easier. I just want it to actually feel good to play. And actually like be an enjoyable experience, you know? But like, besides just the current modes, I think another reason I don't think that we need more endgame is like, I would rather just get more side modes than more endgame. And what I mean is more stuff sort of in the same vein as like Simulated Universe, just something that isn't that, because every mode we have gotten for a while now has just been Simulated Universe stuff. And like, don't get me wrong, I have enjoyed most of them for the most part. Like, I do think Divergent Universe was definitely a very good change to it, and we have gotten, you know, a bunch of good changes from it. I mean, like, does anyone remember how awful farming planar ornaments was before? It took so long, it was so bad. And also, you know, the saving runs thing also was pretty good, but like, at the same time, when it is like all you're getting, it does start to feel repetitive and kind of stale, because no matter like the mechanics of it, the core gameplay of it has just stayed the same, which is just, you know, go into a room, do a thing, go into a room, do another thing, fight a boss, do repeat until you beat it. Like, and I would just like to see like a totally new mode, like maybe like an endless tower mode, or a mode where like you like explore a like wide map and you have to defeat all the enemies in it, and then you fight a big boss at the end. I would just like something new, literally anything new. Like, come on. And on top of that, I would also rather get more events, because we have gotten like barely any events recently, which is really bad for a live service game. And I do feel like Hoyo do sometimes forget that this game is a live service game, because I feel like sometimes they treat it more like a single player game that happens to be live service. Because the fact that we've only had one event for the entirety of phase 1 of this patch is insane. And like, I know some people didn't really like that combat event, but I did actually enjoy the event, since it feels different from like most of the other combat. But like, it being the only event really does not help its case at all. Because like, once you finish the story, which is only gonna last you like so long, there is just like nothing to do this patch. And like, when people are bored is when people start to get the most like pissed off and start, you know, getting way more like complaining and stuff, which some of it is justified, some of it isn't. But like, I have really noticed that when there isn't that much content is when people are getting way more annoyed. Now, I know some people would say like, oh, couldn't they just do all of these things? Give us events, give us side content, and do endgame at the same time? And like, yeah, they definitely could, and they really do need to start stepping it up in terms of like actual like content and not just story. But at the same time, like, if they did add a new game mode, what would they even do? Because I feel like the trio we already have kind of covers everything you would want. Because, like, they're never going to add PvP. I know that's one that people would probably say, like, it's just not going to happen. It's just something that Hoyo seems very against doing in basically every one of their games. And also, I feel like it would just be very pay to win if they did add that. Like, maybe like a raid mode, but I feel like Apocalyptic Shadow already kind of serves that purpose as like a boss fight mode, though I still would like to maybe see some changes to that mode. And like, you know, Starl doesn't have like co-op or something, so I doubt that it would be anything like that. And honestly, I don't even know how you would make co-op work for Starl, at least for combat. Unless you maybe added like a timer for like the turns or something, so like people can't just get like stalled out forever. And even then, like, I just don't think that the game needs another endgame mode right now. I would much rather maybe get like enemies that have like new mechanics and stuff like that, and you know, just completely new things instead of having another sort of like bi-weekly thing to do. Now obviously, you know, if we could get both, that would be great, you know, but honestly I just don't really see that happening, because I feel like we're probably either just gonna get one or the other. I doubt that we're gonna get both at the same time. I just feel like there's way more of a gap in like side content than there is a gap in endgame, since we already have 3 modes. And to be honest, like, I think that most of the problems with the endgame are mainly just with MOC. Like, the other 2 modes I think are fine, like I said. I do think one thing that also partially hurt the endgame is just that a lot of the older characters' kits are just kind of outdated, so they don't really work in the current content, because the current content is a lot more like team and like archetype oriented, whereas like a lot of the more like 1.x characters are a lot more just like generally good, so they don't really work in the current content anymore. So I think that as long as they just like buffed a lot of the like older characters and just like rework MOC, I think the endgame will be in a fine spot. And then like once they do those things, then I could maybe see the need for another mode, because I would much rather them like fix the current modes so that when we get a new mode, it doesn't have the exact same problems, because I do fear that like if we do get another endgame mode, it's just gonna have the exact same like problems of being really favored towards the new characters and feeling really awful for anyone else. Also, one reason why I do feel like we have gotten less in terms of like actual like gameplay content is I do think that the bigger scope of Amphorius is kind of hindering the content of the game right now, because it feels like the devs are putting most of their effort into like the story and like the world of it, because I believe it's going to be going till like what, 3.8, I believe, you know, that's probably going to just be like a epilogue sort of thing. And the content of the game I do think has kind of suffered because of that, which is why I do think we haven't been getting many events, because most of their effort is going mainly towards like the story and designing all of, like the world and stuff. Which, like, to be fair, they could also just be putting all of their like event effort into like the Fate collab, but that also just doesn't really seem like a good strategy to have like barely anything for 3 patches and then just solely be riding on like one big event. I mean, I don't know what the dev cycle is like, but the game really just needs more content in general. At the end of the day, I don't care if it's like endgame or not, the game just needs something new. And I think that's the main thing. It just needs something. I don't know, what do you guys think? Would you guys rather see an endgame mode, or would you rather see like something completely new, or would you rather maybe see like both? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.